Welcome to Business is Good, the podcast all about what it means to be in business in the 21st century. Small and medium-sized businesses are the lifeblood of the UK economy, and globally they can and will have a huge impact on society, the economy and how we live our lives. From technology disruption to reworking a solution to solve the world's biggest problem, Business is Good is a podcast about what it takes to be successful and how every business defines that in different ways. Business is no longer just about being defined by what you do, but it's about giving back and redefining the problems and how we solve them in a way that works for you. I'm your host, Caroline Sumners, and I'll be giving you weekly inspirational stories from business owners who are building business and solving problems. Welcome to another edition of Business is Good. We are now into our 7th or 8th episode. So far, feedback has been really good. Please do let me know if there's anyone in particular that you want me to talk to or interview. And I'm loving talking to such varied businesses and just hearing about all the just fantastic businesses that are out there that are modern types of businesses that are basically driving business for good in this economy. So this week I am talking to James Church from Robot Mascot. I actually worked with James on a project about a year and a half ago on another project that I'm working on, and they helped us immensely. They are a branding agency, or an agency that specialises specifically in developing your pitch if you are trying to get funding for your business. So and the conversation with James was great because it really highlighted the need for, as you grow your business, to really niche down. So really interesting conversation with James about how they started very broad as a brand agency and niched right down to now they only offer one or two kind of core services. So a real lesson in niching and how you need to evolve your business over time. So hope you enjoy this one, and yeah, let me know.
So Robot Mascot is a specialist agency at creating pitch decks for both investment and for convincing your prospects about how great your business is and generating sales leads and interest in your business idea. But the fundamental idea is around investment. That's where we really specialise. We're partnered with people like Crowdcube and Cedars, Seed Legals, and a lot of, sort of money finding services who all like to send their clients our way. So we get some great partnerships and great referrals to work with some really interesting new businesses. And basically we help them create a really powerful pitch that convinces an investor. And we get some incredible results as well. We know that about on average our clients raise 10 times more likely to raise investment than the average startup. So, yeah, that's why we end up with all of these funding agencies trying to refer their clients to us so we can make them more successful at raising some big bucks.
That's pretty cool. I didn't know that there was that statistic around 10. Did you say 10% more? Raise 10%
10
more?
times.
10 times.
Yeah,
wow.
10 times more likely than the average startup is the results we're getting. So, yeah, that's really quite powerful, isn't it? It's good to know. We were quite happy when we discovered that.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. And I'm glad now that you helped us with our pitch deck. So,
yes. Fingers crossed. That puts you at the front of the pack.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously, when you started Robot Mascot, is that how the business started, or did you kind of niche down over time? Because it's quite specific.
Yeah, it is very specific. So, we started life as your fairly average branding and communications agency. Obviously, we believed that the work that we were producing was better than everybody else's. But when you look at it from a business model perspective, it was very much your standard brand consultancy. We were doing websites for people, we were doing brand identities, quite a bit of copywriting. And we had a couple of advisors on our team who both happened to be angel investors as well. And they spotted a couple of things about Robot Mascot that really interested them. And the first thing is that we made quite sort of boring businesses sound exciting. And the second thing was that we made very complex businesses sound simple with the content that we produced. And they put two and two together and realized that this was a massive problem within the investment scene and within the startup scene. And all of the decks that they were being sent by startups who were hoping that they would invest in their business could really value support on just articulating their message, communicating their business idea much more succinctly, much more concisely. And they said if we could find a way to deliver that as an affordable service to these people, we could have something quite interesting, quite exciting, and quite unique there. So that kind of led us on this journey for the last sort of 3 years or so, really. Started to learn more about the investment industry and how we could support startups, started attending pitch events and saw firsthand how difficult some founders and entrepreneurs can find it communicating their idea in a short space of time in an exciting and engaging way, but also one that makes a convincing business case as well. So yeah, over the past sort of 3 years or so, we've been working more and more in this niche. And over that time, we've developed a sort of unique methodology that we take our clients through, which generates that result that we spoke about earlier, that 10 times higher chance of receiving investment. And so we follow this same process with every client to generate the result and the final deck. And it's all about creating, making sure first that the business plan is all in place, that we've got all of the right information that an investor is going to need to make a decision. The next stage is to then think about the structure of the deck and the content. And then finally, it's about designing it in a professional way that will convince an investor. So we take people through these 3 phases, of which there's 6 key parts. And out the end pops a pitch deck that's 15 to 20 slides long that is really good at convincing investors that your business is the one to back. So yeah, it's been quite a journey, and we've conducted hundreds of hours of research with different investors and different startups to sort of learn what works and how best to approach it. And we've gone from sort of starting with face-to-face workshops as part of our process to creating an online tool that does a much more effective and more efficient job for everybody involved. So yeah, it's been quite a journey.
It sounds like it's evolved even since we worked together. So
yes, yeah. So we had a workshop, didn't we? We spent half a day together, and then I sent I think I would have sent a sort of a questionnaire for to pull out some of the bits of your business plan. We've turned that whole process now into a online tool that we call Pitch Prep. And that unpacks all of that information, everything that we did in the workshop, and about what you do and why you do it, and how your product works, as well as all of the information in your business plan. And it's all done online, which gives us as a business scalability. It means that we've recently partnered with funding providers in Asia, so we can start providing this service in Asia, obviously all over the UK rather than just London. So yeah, it gives us that scalability. But from a customer's perspective, from the founder's perspective, it does 2 things. One, it means that you get all of the information in one place much quicker. We tend to find that our typical client will spend sort of 2 to 3 hours on this, rather than the 4-hour workshop session plus a number of hours sort of bringing all the information together on the old way. But also you can sort of save your progress, and if there's anything you're not sure about, you can go away, research it, consider it, and come back to it before you then submit it. So it means that we're getting much better information as well, which allows us to do what we do later on in the process to make it really effective and make sure that the pitch is one that investors are going to buy into.
Yeah, I mean, it was a let's say frustrating but useful process.
Yeah, it can be when we're in those face-to-face workshops. Sometimes I'm asking questions, and you haven't necessarily considered the answer between you and your co-founder.
Yeah.
Whereas when it's done online, you can take stock of that. You can have a longer discussion in private about it, and then input it into the tool, rather than trying to come up with something on the spot because you feel like you need an answer in this workshop session. So yeah, it definitely works out better for everyone.
Although, I think if I remember, I think you did say to us that Jill and I actually agreed on most things, which was quite unique. Yeah. I think apparently,
there was often some times where you would get two co-founders in a room together to do these workshops, and you'd ask a question about, I don't know, something about the vision or the purpose that they have, and they'd come up with quite different answers, and that was always quite interesting to see how two co-founders had a very different sort of vision or reason for doing what they wanted to do. So it was our job to then find a way of making that a unified vision for the company that again, that an investor could see and buy into, that both founders were happy to pursue. So, yeah.
I mean, I guess that kind of leads me on to another question actually then. So is there a pattern or theme of problems that people come to you with, or things that haven't been kind of fully thought through, or, issues where you think people need most help?
So yes, there are some common themes. I think first and foremost, I think the main problem we're solving for the majority of our clients is just the way they articulate their idea. They realise that they don't really have that nailed down in a really concise way. They want to help with the language and the content on how to get their whole, essentially what could be a 30-40 page business plan down into 15 slides, and they're sitting in front, they sort of open PowerPoint, sit in front of this blank screen and just go, I don't know where to start. So by having our process and following our structure, that allows you to create, get the right information in the right order. So there's that kind of, I'm not sure quite where to start or how to articulate what I'm trying to say in a way that an investor will be excited by it. And then the other thing is really around, what should I actually put in there? What should I have in my business plan, my pitch deck, that an investor is really going to care about? Am I missing key bits of information, and does my information stack up? Or under investor scrutiny, is my business plan going to be sort of ripped apart? So again, that's where this pitch prep comes in. It allows us to make sure that there's no gaps, that we've got all the information we need, and then can give advice around any areas where they're missing information, or where you might have overinflated figures is quite common. So you might have a market opportunity information around the size of the market, and that just doesn't match up to your financial projections, for example. Or in order to hit your financial projections, you're going to need a market opportunity that's just really unrealistic, and something that without an extremely good reason, an investor's going to look at and say, you're off your rocker, there's no way you can achieve that in 3 years. Yeah. So it's just making sure that we're giving it a sense check, and that there's all of the business plan content sort of matches up to what we know investors expect as a realistic but ambitious kind of target, because you've got to strike that balance from looking ambitious and not conservative, because people want you to be a massive success, and that's what's going to excite the investor, the potential size and revenue and value of your business in the future. But equally, it doesn't want to look so ridiculous that it's unbelievable. Even if you believe that is the case. So we had a startup once that their kind of figures would suggest that in 3 to 5 years they were getting sort of 72 times the return on investment, which it's fairly big. Not many startups would achieve that. So it was just trying to find a way to make that seem realistic, or reduce that slightly, to make sure that investors weren't put off by the fact that it was so big that this founder may be sort of living in cloud cuckoo land a little bit. So it's just sort of positioning in a way that becomes believable, and not just some crazy figure I've plucked out the air because I'm going to be the next unicorn. So it's just sort of getting that balance right, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was at an event at Wayra on Wednesday. Wayra's if you know it, you probably know it. It's a tech accelerator. Oh, it's an accelerator that was started by Telefonica. But they were talking about, unicorns and we all know why they're called unicorns, right? Because they're so rare. But
yeah,
the chances of actually, it's like 1% or something, or is even less than 1% of all businesses or something. It was some really startling statistic. But the problem is, I think everybody holds that up as the when you see all these companies getting all this money, you think, oh yeah, well, I can do that. But of course, in many cases that won't, or majority of cases that won't happen. So I think it's about, it's about resetting expectations, but not being realistic, I guess, is the thing. Would you say?
Realistic and ambitious, but not over the top.
Balance.
I think is getting that balance, because no one wants to invest in a really conservative business that isn't, because if your figures are really conservative, that's the underlying pretext there, is that you're not a particularly ambitious founder, you're not willing to take risks, and you don't believe enough in your ability to make this happen and make this big. So you've got to strike that balance between something conservative and something quite exciting. So there's the two ends of the extreme, and it's finding that sort of balance in the middle that says, I can trust these guys, they look like they know what they're doing, they're ambitious, but it feels like this is achievable with what they say. It's getting that balance right, and that's where we'll give a bit of advice here and there to some of our clients where they need it. We often see, as we were saying, there's gaps there that need to be filled, or we get quite a lot of traction, and validation is another area where we wish a lot of our clients would spend more time really kind of trying to prove their business model in some way. And it doesn't mean spending loads of money on an MVP, but doing some kind of testing to validate their business idea, validate that their customers actually want the product that they're creating. So it's very tempting in the early stages just to try and raise some money but really, if you can have some proof that your business is something people want, and there's some little tricks you can do, like you could set up a Facebook ads campaign that leads to a landing page, just like a Wix landing page website. And when people click the sign up now button, it takes you to a page that says, really sorry, the product isn't available in your area yet. But really, that means your product isn't available at all. But you take their details, and you can use that data to turn around to an investor in the very early stages before you've got a prototype to say, look, with X amount of spend on Facebook, we were able to generate this many clicks through to the website, and this many people wanted to sign up. So had we had a product, this spend would have resulted in this number of users. And that validates that people want it. So now I'm interested in giving you the money to make it happen and start earning some revenue out of it. So it's just trying to do sort of bits of research that just prove your business to an investor. So it de-risks. Essentially, you're trying to de-risk your business idea in the eyes of an investor as much as you can. And all of these little things add up. It might be quotes from industry leaders that like your idea, PR that you've received. All of this stuff all helps to validate your business. Yeah.
I think. Do you notice any differences between just talking about that realism versus ambition, and sort of like being either overly cautious and with the numbers? Do you notice any differences between women-led and men-led businesses? Because I know that certainly I'm always probably more conservative, and it's not that I'm not ambitious about the business, but I'm always more conservative, I think, about the numbers than probably someone else might be. And that's it comes back to that kind of like imposter syndrome thing, like, and it's not, I don't believe in the product or the service. And I just wonder if there's a difference between, if you see a difference, or whether it's not down to that at all.
I don't notice a difference in gender. I don't think there's a particular gender divide there. I think it's more a personality thing. Right. So some people are naturally more more data orientated and therefore slightly more conservative. They'll try and make it realistic. It'll be very data led, whereas others are more ideas led and more I guess more ideas led, more about the vision.
Yeah.
And they tend to go towards this, whatever happens, this is going to be massive, and the sort of data and the figures they pull together will lead them towards overinflation. So it's more, I don't know if I use disc profiling quite a lot, or have done in the past, and it's the if you think about the influence and dominant types would probably be more likely to overinflate, and the more cautious and steady types of characters would tend to be more conservative in their figures. So and in some cases the founders just don't have a head for numbers, so it's more a case of they're just not sure what's right or what's wrong, and this doesn't work well for them, so they need a bit of advice, and we've got a free download on our site for a 3-year financial forecast spreadsheet that people can fill in, and that kind of sometimes helps. And if they still struggle, then we'd have some expert advisors that could help with the financials. And I think that is quite an important point. Actually, I think a lot of founders and entrepreneurs I know there's always the issue of money and how much all of these things cost, but I think a lot of founders and entrepreneurs in the early days feel like actually they're not being a very good founder if they have to get an expert in to do their business plan, or an expert in to help them with their financials. Surely that's what the founder should do, and I think that's a common misconception. Actually adds credibility to your business plan, and if you've had an expert come in and help you with the figures or help you with the business plan, because essentially from an investor's perspective they know that this is a business plan that could work, because it's kind of validated by someone who's a professional at creating business plans. So it actually possibly has the complete opposite effect of from what a founder's perception of getting experts in might be. So if you think about some of the biggest sort of FTSE 100 companies, the CEO of that company isn't writing their business plans every 2-3 years when they update them. They're getting in people like Deloitte to do them. And it's not because the CEO of this FTSE 100 isn't capable of writing a business plan. It's because it adds more credibility to the business plan and to their board and to their investors that it's being done by Deloitte. And they know what they're doing when it comes to that. So
that's a really good point.
Founders can, so founders can sort of apply that in a much smaller way. I'm not saying go out there and spend millions on getting Deloitte involved, but there's plenty of
they're probably out of touch of reach of most people, but
but there's plenty of advisors out there, and we know a couple of really, really good ones that we always put our clients onto if they need that help to help them refine their plan and make it investor ready a little bit more. So then they can turn around and say, look, this is my business idea, and it's being validated by this expert who really, really knows what they're talking about in this space. So it adds credibility rather than takes it away. And it also shows that you as a founder know what you're good at and know what you're not good at, and that you're willing to bring in experts to make this happen. And that gives confidence in the eyes of an investor over trying to do it all yourself, like a student might, sort of taking it out of that and saying, I'm a leader and I'm going to bring in expertise to make this happen. And that says a lot about the character, I think, of an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I think it's being able to admit where you need help.
Absolutely.
And what your strengths are, and totally. And I'll admit I'm not really a numbers person, but I'm having to be more and more. It's not everyone's forte. No, exactly. And spreadsheets. My background's marketing, obviously, and it's that right brain, left brain thing, isn't it? And I feel like the numbers, when I see a spreadsheet in front of me, it just hurts my brain. But I'm having to be more kind of, really focused on it, actually, which isn't a bad thing. Yeah. But I think you're right about the credibility, for sure.
It does make a difference, I think.
Yeah. So tell me, I don't know if you can, but what's been like a real highlight of when you, for instance, since you started Robot Mascot, what have been sort of one of the things where you've thought, that was one of the best things we've done, or, what's
okay. So I think probably our most standout result, which was quite exciting, was producing a pitch deck for someone, taking them through our process, and they did one pitch event and raised more than they were asking for in that one event. So that was quite a highlight, and that they were, I think, got 200% more than they were asking for in one pitch event. Wow. The first one they did after working with us. So that was a good highlight for us, was getting a result like that in such a short space of time for a client.
Had they previously been pitching and not getting anywhere, or was it the first time pitching?
No, they hadn't been. They'd been networking a lot. They had a quite a good profile, but no one really knew much about their business, and they didn't have a deck or anything that they were sending them. They just said, "I've got this idea, and we'll be launching a funding round soon. Can I have your details so I can send you my pitch when it's ready?" type thing. And they went and did one pitch event at a particular angel group, and got all more than what they needed in that one event, which was great. And they ended up 6 months later closing around for many, many times more than what they were initially asking for, which was really exciting. We were so pleased for that founder. That was quite exciting. That was sort of quite early on as well. So that's when we realised we were onto something. That what we were doing was making a big difference to people. And I think the other sort of highlights are more recently. I think one realising that actually, if we taking the leap collectively, myself and my business partner Nick, saying, you know what, let's niche now. We're building a reputation here for being great at producing these pitch decks. Let's just focus on this now and leave the branding stuff sort of ticking it along in the background, but not really focusing that on as our main core business. And that was a massive moment for us at Robot Mascot. That really taking that risk to narrow down your potential clients in a way, narrow down the type of work you're going after. Has actually made us grow quicker and much faster, and I think that was a really important point in Robot Mascot's history, looking back at it. So that's probably a highlight in making that decision and saying we're going to be the guys known for being the best in the business at creating pitch decks that convince investors, and that's been a highlight, and then that has led to loads of highlights since then, really. Working with Crowdcube, being there, sort of having their seal of approval and being their only partner for creating pitch decks. So we're an official partner of theirs, and they send all their clients who need a improvement on their deck our way, and that's an exclusive relationship. So those sorts of things are real highlights as well, getting those partnerships and that validation from big players in the industry, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think just you mentioned about niching. I think that's the one thing that people have got business that they know they need to do, but a kind of, you said it's scary because you're being so specific. So that kind of leads me on to kind of another question is, what do you wish you'd known when you started out? Was it like, let's niche down, or do you think you had to get to that point naturally?
That's a good question. I think if we'd have tried to niche to begin with, we'd have niched into the wrong thing. It wouldn't have been anything, because this particular area of expertise sort of developed over various conversations and with different advisors and interviewing potential clients and that kind of thing. It happened organically. I think if we'd have said, right, we need to niche when we first started, we'd have niched into something that wasn't unique and wasn't wasn't of interest to people. And as a service, it would have been, I don't know, it would have probably been, okay, let's niche into logo design, like instead of branding as a whole. And you know, there's still thousands of people doing logo design, so you're not really niching in a way that's going to have impact on a market. So yeah, I think it definitely had to happen over time, because it's finding that it's in the same way that a tech company, a startup would look to find their product market fit. We were doing exactly the same with our service, what our service market fit was, and that takes time, I think, and research, and yeah, I think sometimes these things just have to take a little bit of time to get to, and then you've got to pay the bills as well when you're in the situation where you're creating a business and this is your sole focus. You know, there's always that risk of you've got to also pay those bills, so you need to take on some work even if that's not where you want to niche in the future. So yeah, for a service industry, it's about trying to get that balance, I think. And for some people it might be that they're starting their business in with a particular niche because they've seen a problem that needs solving from their experience of where they're working. But for me and Nick, it was really about launching Robot Mascot as a business that we enjoyed working at. So we were working at a lot of branding agencies, and we weren't particularly enjoying our time there, and we found the culture not particularly one that we enjoyed or liked. There was a lot of long hours for little reward. We both found ourselves sort of feeling a bit sort of low and not particularly content. So we just had a beer in a pub, which is where most of these best things start, and said, look, let's just do it. Let's do our own thing. Let's start our own agency. So we did. We quit our jobs and we started Robot Mascot and said, we'll just work on the project we want to work on and just enjoy ourselves. And that was the start of it, really. We had no more intention than that. So we just did what we know, which is create great brands for people. And then it's evolved into what it is now, which is a much more interesting and more scalable business. And we've only got to this place because of some of the great advisors and the great people that we've learned from along the way, on what not to do as much as what to do. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, that's interesting because you kind of pivoted but didn't pivot, if that makes sense, didn't you? You sort of like change the business, but it's a natural evolution. And I do think sometimes people get a bit hung up on, I've got to niche, but I think you're right, especially in a service, I think, business, that you've got to make sure that you're doing something that maybe is naturally evolved and that you love doing, because it's very easy to get involved in stuff that you don't.
Yeah, and I guess it depends. I mean, for us, we I guess you could say we stumbled upon it, but we sort of worked hard to figure out from a couple of pieces of advice we had whether or not this sector, this niche would work for us. Because the initial thought was, hang on a minute, how can we make money out of this? Because, you know, we're trying to help people raise money. So before that, they don't have any money. So that was the initial thing to overcome. But we found a target audience that do appreciate the value in which we add and will pay the fees that are required to access our service. But then it was a case, so we found a sweet spot in kind of what people are willing to pay for the sorts of thing that we deliver, and then how do we make that scalable? Then because it's a bit different from your typical branding project where you can, you know, bigger budgets and longer projects to something that's quite a small 2-3 week engagement on a lower fee. So it's more about scale. So then that was the next challenge to overcome. How do we get scale out of this? And that's what led to this pitch prep tool rather than a workshop, because we needed to find a way to deliver our service at scale. And that has led to us creating tools and creating ways of doing that, but also not without jeopardizing the end result. And actually what we've managed to create is something that improves the end result even further. So we'll be able to hit two of those points. We're able to now deliver at scale, so good for us, but we're also able, this process also allows us to deliver a higher standard and a better result at scale. So yeah, I think these things take time, and you sort of work on it, and you keep moving it forward bit by bit, I think.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think it's having a bit of patience, isn't it? So it's moving at the appropriate speed, being patient at the same time.
Yeah.
And I don't know that you can ever. I don't know that anyone ever gets that fully right, to be honest.
No, and because if we'd have created this service from the off with, we're going to have this online tool called Pitch Prep that's going to gather all this information. It would have been a disaster. It would have asked all the wrong things. It would have been based a lot on assumption, and that kind of thing. It's the act of having done hundreds of workshops with hundreds of clients and interviewed hundreds of investors that has allowed us to have the knowledge to know what to ask and the way you ask it and the order in which you ask the questions to best unpack the information out of the mind of the entrepreneur. Yeah. So we wouldn't have been able to create the process in the right way had we thought of it as a piece of tech first versus a workshop. So it was really important to go through that sort of process, really, to figure out the best way to do it, the best questions to ask, and having that mindset. For me, it's always having that mindset of after every project or after every workshop, what worked well, what didn't, how can we change it so it's better next time? And it eventually got to a point where I felt like a robot standing there in the room with these startups. And like, I was asking the question and I knew exactly what answer was going to come back almost, and exactly what to ask next. And it got refined so much that these workshops didn't become interesting anymore. They became quite boring for me because I was just going through the motions and it was just working every time. And we were asking the right questions, we were getting the right response. And that was when I thought, this is ready to be an online tool now.
And I suppose there's a danger then that your service starts to suffer, maybe, because you're not, you do know exactly what's going to happen. It's almost predictable. So you've got to make sure that you're keeping it fresh as well, haven't you?
Exactly, and make sure that if people are, one, paying for me to be in a room with them, and two, spending the time taking half a day out of their day, they're getting value out of it, and actually we've refined it to a point where the best value can be created through this online tool that gets them a much better result in a much shorter space of time. So that's where we add the value now, and it's often then a more of a 30-minute follow-up call after they've gone through the online tool, and just to iron out any kinks or clarify anything that we're not entirely sure with.
So how long is
a half an hour
now then? So they fill out the tool, then there's half an hour, and then how long till they, or is that not, you can't really say, or it's 2 weeks?
So we typically, from the point of filling out and submitting pitch prep and going through that online process, we typically return the pitch within 2 to 3 weeks.
Wow.
It's a much quicker process than I think perhaps you experienced as well back when 18 months ago when we were working on it together. So everything's just refined, and we've got internal processes that are just really, really well ironed out, and it also seems to be working like a dream at the moment, which is good.
Well, that's cool. So where can anybody find Pitch Prep? Is it robotmascot.com or .co.uk?
So robotmascot.co.uk is our website. If you're interested in the sort of pitching services, there is a pitch section of the website. You can find out all about those, and Pitch Prep is part of that, of what we call our perfect pitch service. So our perfect pitch service takes you through that whole kind of discovery, the pitch prep stuff, the content writing, and then the final design and output of a pitch deck. And pitch prep is one part of that process. Brilliant.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's probably kept you for long enough, probably. I know
it's been a pleasure.
We were chatting loads at the beginning, but thank you so much,
We were.
James. We were catching up, weren't we? So I didn't record that.
We were, yeah. No, but no, it was pleasure to talk to you, and hopefully you found it interesting what we've done.
Really good. I'm going to go check it out now because I didn't know that you'd actually changed it around that much. So thank you so much, James.
It's developing all the while. No trouble at all. Right. It's my pleasure.
How fantastic was it listening to James and hearing all about Robot Mascot and how they've grown that business over the last 2 to 3 years. Honestly, when we worked with James, they made the process so easy and just really challenged you on the things that you need to think about. So if you are growing your business, I think he did do a little pitch at the end for his website, but it's robotmascot.co.uk. Check them out. They've got some really super helpful stuff on their website if you are looking at your messaging, your positioning, and basically how to pitch your business. So that's it for another week, and tune in next time. Thanks a lot. Tune in next week where we have more inspirational stories talking about moving your business beyond what it is and moving it more towards what you're in business for, what's important, and doing good and changing the way things should be done.